Hello and welcome to a new series on techniques. In this particular video we're going to be looking at the jab. Now every boxing gym that you go to will have their own take on the jab, which is perfectly fine. It's said if you go to 1,000 different gyms you'll learn 1,000 different jabs. Again, that's fine, but it's the fundamentals behind that that must remain, and that's what we're going to be looking at in this first video. I've got soft knees, rear heel is off the floor, and I like about 90 degrees here. Too close and it allows the opponent in closer. Too far out, and if you're doing martial arts you can get a limb destruction. There's nothing wrong with close in, but for this particular series of videos, this is where I want everyone to start off. Now what I'm looking at is certain parts of the body moving away. Okay, so if I jab and the rear shoulder comes back, which I see a lot, half of my energy is going behind me and I want it to go forwards. So let's take a look at some things that we can do to stop this. Okay, first off we're going to be looking at the rear leg. Soft knees, and I push the toes down, drive the hip up, and as it does this turns this lead hip forward. So there's a counterclockwise motion, it drives this rear hip forward. So even without throwing the punch, as I push the toes down and drive the hip up and turn this hip forward, you can see the lead hand is already moving towards its target. But what I don't want to do is this rear leg to collapse inwards this way. Okay? So viewed from the front, I don't want this leg to collapse inwards this way. So I don't want the heel to come forward. When I drive, I want to drive forward. So I don't turn the rear heel in, and it doesn't turn this leg in. Here. I don't want to turn in. So although this is still driving forward, I don't want to collapse this leg. I also don't want to straighten this leg. So viewed from the side, if I straighten this leg, when I throw my rear cross, I've got nothing really to throw it. I can't draw the power from the legs. So when I throw the jab, I do push down with this leg, I do turn this hip forward, but this doesn't collapse in. I don't turn the heel in here. So I can still from here push to throw my rear cross. Something that you can do is have a training partner put their leg behind your leg here. So they're stood behind you with their leg here, so you can still drive from this leg, but it doesn't collapse in because they've jammed their leg against yours. So drive up from the rear foot, push the toes down, drive up. As you drive up, there is a turn on the hip here. And you can see without throwing, this has already started to come forward. But I haven't straightened the leg and I haven't collapsed it in. So that's the first thing to look at. Let's move on. Okay, the next thing to look at is the rear shoulder. What I don't want to do, as I drive forward, if I start to turn my rear shoulder away from my opponent, which is what I see a lot of, even if the lead hand extends, you can see the rear leg has collapsed, it's turned inwards, it's straight, the heel's come in, but my shoulder has turned away. What you need to be able to practice is locking off the rear of the body. Okay? So when a door slams, it's the bit where the hand is that makes the noise. That's the bit, the side of the door, that has the power, but it's the pivot point, the hinge. That's where the energy drives from. So here, I want you to work along your centre line. This side, the left-hand side of the body, okay, locks off. It doesn't turn away. So this is where I pivot, not here. So as opposed to pivoting here, I pivot here. This locks off. Okay, it takes a little bit of practice, but what I don't want to do is turn this away. I want everything coming towards you. Okay? I don't want 50% going that way. I'm exaggerating, but I do still see this. And of course, this has left a massive gap now. This guy slips and hits. So I want to keep this, hit this here. Don't turn it away from the face. Pivot around the centre of the body. Lock off the opposite side. Takes a little bit of practice, but watch that rear side of the opposing side of the body doesn't collapse and turn away. Okay, we move on to the actual jab itself. I've said that I push the toes down into the floor, drives the hips up. The lead hip turns in towards the opponent, and that drives the lead hand. I'm trying not to, when I'm practicing, I'm trying not to engage my shoulder too much, because as soon as I twitch or tense here, that's a signal. I want to be really light, just like I'm playing a game of touch with a child, really light. So there's no, should be, no shoulder involvement. It keeps it really simple. The best way to imagine this, if I've pulled a bungee cord off of the wall, so I've got some tension in the cord here, and someone snips it, my hand's just going to fire forward. And that's exactly what I want. I've not got any driving muscles here to push it out. I've pulled the bungee cord, someone's gone to snip, and nice and relaxed, the hand goes out. So at a basic level, when you're sparring or when you're shadow boxing in front of the mirror, this is how I want you to be. Nice and light, you've pulled the bungee cord, someone snips it, you're driving up from here, and the hand goes out. Nice and light. Don't drive it from here, drive it from here. Out at 50, back at 100. One other thing I want you to remember is it's like you're punching through a tube. So you punch and you bring that punch back on that same line. You don't drop it. Okay? The way I teach my students this, if you imagine those little loops of wire and the hoop that buzzes when you touch it. So this is the hoop and there's a bit of wire between here and your chin. I need to go out on that line and back on that line without touching. Okay, we've got some basics. Let's put this together. Soft knees, rear heel off the ground, hands high. I've got my hands a little bit low here because I'm talking to you, but look, they're not doing anything. So hands higher than you think. Okay, top of the head high, not here, top of the head high. Okay. Drive, push the toes down, drive the hip up and forward, but don't allow this leg to collapse in. Okay. You can still drive, but keep this bent. Don't allow this side of the body to collapse. Remember, have a partner put their leg behind yours, so you're driving. They can feel you driving and they can correct you, but you can't collapse the leg in. Keep the shoulder forward, pivot around the centre of the body, so the opposite side locks off. This is the same if I throw a rear cross. Okay? I don't want this side to turn away. There's a massive gap here if this guy angles off. So I want to lock. Okay, the opposite side of the body. Jab, cross. Okay, pivot around the centre. Hands high, hip and back on the high line. That's good basic fundamentals for your first jab.